In 2015, I walked through the doors of a castle. Imagine for a moment my excitement. I was eager to see the space and engage with the people. 2015 was my first year as the principal of Windsor Forest High School, home of the Knights, where the mission was to challenge all students to lead and excel. And I remember my first few days so vividly. There I was standing in the front foyer of this campus, flags draping from its high ceilings, and students and staff moving about with a business-like pace to get to their next scheduled destination, which was lunch, by the way. It wasn't a grand foyer as I expected. In fact, it was quite narrow, lacking the openness of your more modern day campuses. But it was in that space that I encountered a student who had just disrupted the flow of the day. And it was his story and in this space that would set the stage and provide a lens for our focused school improvement work over the next 3 to 4 years. This moment during my first year occurred that very first week, and it will become the why of our culture redesign and instructional priorities, and in particular around co-teaching and student engagement for all. I consider this a bold step for school improvement, but it was essentially the collective efficacy and belief that our leadership in instructional practice and instructional processes that would make the difference in student success outcomes. Our first step was to ensure our culture could roar. It needed to be loud and permeate every aspect of our work. This was relationships, ownership, accountability, and respect. This was a staff and student culture value system. Knowing our students by name, by need, and their story was priority number one. Secondly, we knew that while the data said these groups of students needed the greatest level of support, our instructional priority and work needed to start at tier one. So with the focus on removing barriers and maximizing learning for all students, we essentially were taking a UDL-like approach to instructional planning and delivery. Our teachers needed to recognize the importance of this tier one space and those specially designed instructional strategies. Tier one instruction was priority number two. Thirdly, we understood that we needed to leverage professional development in a way that equipped teachers with those practical strategies and tools that would enhance their teaching immediately. Our professional development around co-teaching was particularly important. Priority number three was around developing systems of support and accountability for co-planning for tier one instruction. Finally, our greatest challenge was the owning of these priorities. And ownership was leadership. More specifically, it was organizing those systems of support, walking through to monitor for accountability, and navigating next steps for continuous improvement, and never leaving it. You see, in 2015, our data told a short story of a design dilemma. Narrow spaces that address some, noticeable gaps between student groups, and movement without clear instructional direction. Over the course of the next few years, our commitment to redesign and our boldness, albeit not an easy task and not without its stumbles along the way, would result in our new story of closing gaps by opening spaces. Our students with disability met and exceeded their targets in English, math, science, and social studies. Now, I know not all stories have a happy ending. In fact, the young man who I had encountered with during that first week at the castle was a special education student. The teachers knew his name. They certainly knew his needs. As a special ed student, they were well aware of his exceptionality and the accommodations to support him. but they didn't quite know his story. Unfortunately, the student did not remain at our school, and so I'm not certain about his school success outcomes. But what we learned in his story, and the very reason why he left, was that he was a military kid to a single father. He had moved around quite a bit, had acted out and experienced some traumatizing experiences previously in grade school. And he had significant learning gaps, particularly in reading. And the learning and support spaces that we provided were not effective. So, although I don't know the end of his story did provide us an opportunity to redesign our thinking and be intentional in our work around student engagement for all. And that is our school story.